The Valencia sun was a promise, golden, unyielding, warm on Isabel's cheeks as she stepped from the taxi onto the dusty drive of her late grandfather's orange grove. The city's clamor seemed far away and small, replaced by birdsong and the sweet tang of citrus in the air. The sprawling farmhouse stood stoically among the rows of gleaming green trees. A little faded, but still proud. Isabel paused, keys clinking in her hand, and let memory sweep over her. Summers as a child, running barefoot with juice-stained lips, her grandfather's stories in the twilight. Life had whisked her away years ago, to crowded apartments and shimmering city skylines, where she became Isabel the architect, not Isabel the granddaughter. Inside, the house felt like her grandfather's still lingered, the faint scent of pipe tobacco, the worn velvet armchair, the heavy trunk near the window. She ran her hands along the smooth wood, recalling how he'd warned, some secrets need a little more sunlight before they can bloom. That first night, restless and unable to sleep, Isabel padded downstairs to the trunk. The lock yielded after a stubborn moment. Inside, amongst yellowing maps and faded photographs, she found a bundle of letters tied with blue ribbon. The paper was brittle, dense with a looping, impassioned script, signed always, "Yours, Antonio." Her heart hammered as she read by moonlight. The words ached with longing. "Meet me where the sun sets fire to the fruit, and let our shadows entwine on sacred soil," Antonio wrote. Each letter was poetry, every promise urgent under uncertain stars. The mystery stoked something wild in Isabel. Who was this Antonio? Why the secrecy? A clatter on the porch sent her scrambling. She peered through the window and saw a figure, broad-shouldered, gentle in his movements, packing tools into a crate beneath the moon. She recognized Javier, the caretaker, who'd worked the grove for years and sent her kind emails about bloom times and yields. Trying to sound braver than she felt, Isabel opened the door. "Up late too?" Javier startled, then grinned. She noticed warm eyes behind dark lashes. "Couldn't sleep. The orange blossoms keep whispering. I thought I'd check on the irrigation. And you?" Isabel hesitated. Honesty was best. "I found something. Letters. My grandfather. Someone named Antonio." Javier's brows lifted. "Those old stories have deep roots," he said, uncertainty sparking between them. He nodded to the trunk. "Sometimes the grove holds memories, even when people are gone." She held up the topmost letter, her curiosity flaring. Isabel wondered if she was ready to follow its winding path, no matter where it might lead. The next morning dawned golden and fragrant, waking Isabel with a gentle insistence. Sunlight filtered through sheer curtains, painting stripes on the wooden floor, and across the letter she'd left open on her bedside table. She stretched, feeling a strange anticipation hum in her chest as she recalled Javier's words and the secrets that waited beneath the grove's leaves. After a quick breakfast of tart orange slices and bread, Isabel wandered outside. She found Javier near the henhouse, kneeling beside a stubborn irrigation pipe. He lifted his head when she approached, wiping his hands on a rag. "Buenos dias, Isabel. Did the letters keep you up?" he asked, his tone easy, but his eyes flickering with curiosity. They did, Isabel admitted, holding up another page. The ink was smudged at the edges, as if kissed by summer rain. Antonio talks about the old stone wall beside the forgotten fountain. Do you know where that is? Javier's smile was wistful. Follow me. He led her along a winding path, leaves crunching beneath their feet, sun dappling their arms and faces. They talked as they walked, about drip lines and city noise, her architecture dreams, and his desire to study horticulture in Barcelona. As they reached a thicket of wild rosemary, Javier pointed. There, my grandfather said your abuelo built that fountain for someone he loved. The fountain was cracked with age, but still beautiful. Moss-draped and half-hidden beneath drooping orange branches. The stone wall was cool under Isabel's fingers. She brushed away some ivy and found, carved into the stone, para a siempre. Her breath caught. For a, always. Silence pulsed between them. Javier bent down, pulling away more vines. Antonio met your grandfather here, under this tree. My abuela told me. She thought it was only rumor, a poet and a farmer, sneaking poetry and secrets while the world kept spinning. Isabel felt the words settle in her chest like a psalm. So the letters are real love, not just family stories. Javier nodded, studying her. Some loves don't fade. They just wait to be found again. She turned to him, the weight of the grove and its history pressing close. Do you think love can really last like that? He hesitated, looking thoughtful. Only if someone's brave enough to keep looking for it. Their gazes lingered, a heartbeat longer than two, in the shifting shade. Possibility curled like a vine around Isabel's heart. Maybe this was more than a search for answers. Maybe it was the start of something she'd never dared to find. A soft drizzle pattered the terracotta roof that afternoon, soaking the orange grove and leaving the world smelling fresh and electric. Isabel sat at the kitchen table, a mosaic of letters spread before her, lost in a centuries-old whisper of Antonio and her grandfather's secret love. She traced the loops and pauses with her fingertip, hunting for clues that might stitch the past into clarity. Javier knocked on the kitchen door, rainwater dripping from his hair. He held out a small, battered tin. Found this in the tool shed, he said, voice gentle. It has your grandfather's initials. Maybe there's a clue? Isabel opened it carefully. Inside were 2 tarnished keys, a pocket watch, and a folded scrap of paper. She smoothed it open, revealing a map of the grove inked in blue, with a red mark near the southern edge. Excitement zinged in her chest. It's like a treasure hunt, she grinned, surprised at how young and alive she felt. Javier warmed to her spark. Let's go, the rain's letting up. Their boots squelched through wet grass as they made their way to the map's marked spot. There, in a grove thick with wild poppies, they found a weathered bench and an old tin box half buried beneath orange peels and leaves. Isabel knelt, heart learning their story. You're keeping it alive. Maybe at the end, you'll write your own. The rain brightened the colors around them, filling the day with a sense of promise. As Isabel gazed at Javier, she realized that every secret, every clue, had led her not only closer to her grandfather and Antonio, but also to this quiet, unexpected hope blossoming before her. Hope for a future she hadn't dared imagine. The following day mirrored the stillness of dawn, the grove washed in a pale, heavy mist. Isabel wandered the rows, Antonio's letters tucked into her jacket. Every tree felt charged with remembered footsteps and glances not meant to be seen. She found herself drawn to the photographs she and Javier had unearthed. Proof that her grandfather's love story was more true and painful and beautiful than anything she'd ever known. Javier joined her mid-morning, carrying 2 mugs of bitter-sweet coffee. "You look like you haven't slept," he said softly, offering a cup. Isabel managed a wan smile. "Too many thoughts. About them. About us." He watched her, gentle and open. "You know, every year since your grandfather passed, I've dreamed of leaving Valencia, trying my luck in Barcelona. But this place..." Javier trailed off, glancing toward the trees. "It's hard to leave stories half-finished." She took a shaky breath. What if the real story isn't in the letters, but in what we do with them? Javier's gaze was unwavering. "Then let's find the rest." They decided to visit Carmen, an old family friend. She was a quiet woman with sharp eyes, rumored to remember every secret the grove ever held. At her little whitewashed house, Carmen let them in, her hands trembling only slightly as she poured tea. Isabel placed an envelope on the worn table. Carmen's eyes widened as she recognized the handwriting. "Antonio was a restless spirit," she said quietly, tracing the signature. "Your grandfather loved him as one plant loves sunlight, quietly, always. But the world did not forgive so easily then." Isabel leaned forward. "Did Antonio write poetry for anyone else?" Carmen shook her head. "Never. He left after the last harvest they shared. No one saw him again." Javier's voice broke the silence. "Why did they hide?" Carmen looked at them both, her gaze raw. "Because loving bravely doesn't always mean the world is kind, but they gave each other every moment they could." As they left, Isabel felt tears pricking her eyes. Javier reached for her hand, and for a fleeting instant, the warmth of their touch brought her back into the present. "I don't want to hide," Isabel said, her voice small but certain. Javier squeezed her fingers gently. "Then let's not. Not here. Not with each other." For the first time since she'd arrived, the grove felt not just like a memory, but as a place where something new could begin. The days that followed unfolded with the lazy certainty of summer. Together, Isabel and Javier fell into a quiet rhythm. Mornings spent caring for the grove, afternoons poring over old letters beneath the wide-armed shade of orange trees. Each note revealed more of Antonio and her grandfather's secret world. Longing glances over baskets of fruit, whispered plans for stolen hours, poems tucked between tree roots like wishes cast into the earth. One afternoon, as cicadas sang loud and shrill, Isabel found a letter unlike the rest. The paper bore an unfamiliar, elegant seal, a pressed orange blossom, faded with time. She read aloud, her voice trembling. "One day when the groves are full and brave hearts beat loud, you will find what we left behind. Follow the stones that rise where the wind dances with the petals. Only then will the last secret bloom. Yours, Antonio. Javier listened closely, brow furrowed. The stones where the wind dances. Do you think it's the old windmill at the edge of the orchard? Isabel's heart pounded with anticipation. Let's find out. They set off, laughter bubbling between them as they made their way through tangles of grass and wildflowers. The windmill stood stoic against the blue sky, its stones weathered and ivy draped. Jasmine bloomed thickly around the entrance, the perfume decadent in the heat. Inside, dust motes swirled in golden shafts of sunlight. They searched carefully until Javier pried up a loose stone near the far wall. Beneath it rested a small wooden box, its lid carved with a single letter, A. Hands shaking, Isabel lifted the box and opened it. Inside, the last poem, a declaration of love, tender and unashamed, written in Antonio's hand. Beside it, a pressed orange blossom, impossibly intact. Javier smiled softly, wonder in his eyes. He wanted someone to find this, someone who would understand. Isabel wiped tears from her cheeks. I do. I think it's time the whole story was told. I can feel them here, Javier. I don't want to let these memories disappear. He reached out gently, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face, his hand lingering. Then you'll stay? She met his gaze, sunlight and memory swirling between them. If you'll stay with me. The wind rustled through the open window, carrying the scent of jasmine and oranges, a promise as steadfast as the trees that surrounded them. Nights turned softer in the grove now, the stars burning brighter as if in honor of the truths Isabel and Javier had uncovered. Word of their late-night discoveries drifted softly among those who still remembered Antonio, stirring the curiosity of neighbors and old friends who visited bearing homemade cakes and questions. Isabel, emboldened by Javier's steady encouragement, decided it was time to share the story beyond family whispers. She announced a gathering at the farmhouse, an evening to celebrate the love and poetry that grew among the oranges. As the date drew near, nerves fluttered in her stomach. What if people don't understand? Isabel confessed one warm dusk as she and Javier strung fairy lights among the trees. She paused, hands full of twinkling bulbs, searching his eyes for reassurance. Javier fastened the last string and smiled. The people who matter will listen, and if not, we've still honored them our own way. He lifted one of Isabel's hands, squeezing gently. I'm proud of you. The night of the gathering, the grove shimmered with anticipation. Strings of lights glowed through the leaves, casting golden halos on the gathering crowd. Carmen arrived first, her eyes misty with pride, and soon others followed. Farmers with sun-creased faces, children darting between tables laden with tarts and pitchers of sweet wine. Isabel stood at the head of a makeshift stage, Javier at her side. With trembling fingers, she read Antonio's last poem aloud, her voice somehow both strong and deeply vulnerable. As the verses unfurled, silence fell, a powerful, listening hush. By the time she finished, tears glinted in more eyes than her own. Carmen pressed her hand over her heart. Someone at the back began to clap, hesitant but hopeful. In moments, the grove rang with applause, a celebration not just of two men's secret love, but of courage, forgiveness, and all the possibility the orchard now promised. Javier slipped his arm around Isabel. See? They understand the important parts. She leaned into him, proud. I want to make the grove a place for stories and dreams, all kinds. What if we host poetry nights, classes? Let other voices blossom here. Javier grinned, his dreams echoing hers. This is just the beginning, Isabel. As lanterns bobbed gently above and laughter mingled with the song of night insects, Isabel felt the inheritance of the grove settle lovingly on her shoulders. The orchard's secrets were no longer hidden. They were the roots for everything beautiful yet to bloom. As word spread about the poetry gathering, the orange grove became a magnet for dreamers and storytellers. Mornings began with the laughter of children zigzagging between the trees, and afternoons found Isabel hosting impromptu writing circles beneath the old windmill. The letters and stories that once were hidden now colored every corner of the farm with hope and creativity. But even as the orchard pulsed with new life, Isabel sensed restlessness stirring in Javier. Sometimes she caught him gazing beyond the trees, his thoughts seeming to roam far away. One evening, she found him at the fountain, skimming the surface of the cracked basin with a flat stone. The air was thick with the scent of ripening fruit. "You're quiet," she said, sitting beside him. "Did Carmen's lemon tart finally do you in?" He softened at her gentle teasing, but his eyes were troubled. "My brother called from Barcelona today. There's a spot for me in that horticulture program I always dreamed about." Isabel's heart flipped, a bittersweet note sounding in her chest. "That's amazing, Javier. This is your chance." He nodded, restless. "I never thought I'd have reason to stay until you came. And now," she placed her hand over his, "you shouldn't give up your dream. This grove, these stories, wouldn't exist without someone willing to follow what calls to them." Javier turned, eyes searching hers. "And what about you? What calls you, Isabel?" She looked around, imagining her own future here. The grove alive with poetry, laughter, and the memory of love that refused to fade. "I think I finally want to plant my roots, but I want you to be happy too." He held her gaze, emotion flickering across his face. "None of this would matter if I lost you." Quiet settled, thick and shimmering. Isabel felt both the ache of old longing and the sweet ache of new possibility battle inside her. "Let's promise," she finally whispered, "that no matter what comes, we'll be honest, like Antonio and my grandfather wished they could be." Javier smiled then, small but certain. "Always honest, even if it hurts." Above them, the first stars blinked into being. The moon bathed the grove in silver, as if blessing what was fragile and true. Their story, like those hidden letters, was still unfolding, uncertain, but somehow unstoppable, buoyed by hope and the quiet courage of beginning anew. Summer stretched long and golden, but each day now carried a quiet, ticking tension. While the poetry gatherings and writing circles flourished, Isabel found herself measuring time by glances and half-said goodbyes. Every shared breakfast with Javier felt precious, suspended between certainty and what might come next. One evening, after packing away notebooks and teacups from a lively outdoor reading, Isabel lingered by the kitchen window. From there, she watched Javier among the trees, silhouetted by the setting sun. He turned as if feeling her gaze, and lifted his hand in a silent wave. Later, she found him in the barn, his suitcase half-packed, clothes scattered across a bale of hay. The scent of oranges clung to everything, sharp, sweet, bittersweet. "So you're going," Isabel said softly, her arms crossed tight. Javier didn't hide the tremor in his voice. "I leave in 2 days, if I'm brave enough." "And are you?" she asked, the simplest, hardest question. He set down a shirt and sat beside her on the old wooden bench. "I'm scared, Isabel. I'm scared I'll miss this place, and you, more than I can handle." There was a pause as the dusk settled heavy and blue between them. Isabel reached into her pocket and brought out one of Antonio's poems, the last one, bold and luminous. "Listen to this part," she said, her voice trembling. "If your heart must travel, let it leave seeds behind. For in every new season, something of us will grow." Javier shut his eyes, and a tear slid down his cheek. "I think I needed to hear that." She took his hand, woven through with calluses and heart. "Javier, I want you to go, and I want you to come back when you're ready. This grove is as much yours as mine now. I'll keep things blooming." He squeezed her hand in return, fierce and grateful. "Promise you'll write? Every week until you come home." She smiled, though her voice quaked. "I'll fill these trees with our letters, just like before." They hugged long and tight, the past and future mingling in their shared warmth. The world outside was vast and unknown, but inside the grove, promise was strong, rooted deep as old love and new hope. As Javier rested his head on her shoulder, the first nightingale began to sing. Their hearts, though stretching toward different horizons, beat in time, never really apart, only paused in the long, sweet, growing season of waiting and reunion. Javier's absence pressed on the grove like a gentle ache, never empty, but changed. Isabel threw herself into the orchard's rhythms, shaping the land into a haven for creativity and memory. Poetry nights flourished, drawing kindred spirits from far and wide. Isabel began compiling Antonio's letters and her grandfather's poems into a book, weaving their story with her own. Each week, without fail, she wrote a letter to Javier. She tucked them beneath the old stone by the windmill, as they'd agreed, each note alive with hope and stories. How the trees blossomed fiercely, how Carmen's honey tarts had improved, how she sometimes found herself lost in the middle of a line of poetry and thinking only of him. Javier's replies arrived just as faithfully, first crisp and hesitant, then blooming into full pages of life in Barcelona, the rush of classes, the sweetness of learning, and little details meant just for her. An orange blossom traced on the margins of his letters, a scrap of a new poem tucked into the fold. Yet sometimes loneliness settled on Isabel's shoulders at dusk. She watched the sun dip low behind the orchard and wondered if Antonio had ever longed as fiercely for a lover's return, for the sound of footsteps threading through the trees. Carmen tried to comfort her, saying, "You're both growing, a little apart, so you can bloom together more bravely." Then, in late autumn, a letter from Javier stilled her heart. "The semester is nearly done. I've learned so much, but I miss you more than I ever thought possible. I want to come home, Isabel, if you still want to have me. If this place, if you, can truly be my future. Her answer was simple. That night, under a sky brilliant with stars, Isabel replied, "This grove has roots, but it also has room to grow. Come see what we can plant together." The next days passed in a tender rush. Isabel tidied the farmhouse, fixed the leaky faucet Javier had always meant to repair, even picked wildflowers to set by the old photos of her grandfather and Antonio. The grove buzzed with expectation, every leaf and petal pressed close with hope. On the morning Javier was due to return, rain threatened at dawn, but sunshine broke through as she waited under the windmill, clutching her latest letter in nervous hands. Just as the clock struck noon, she heard it, the familiar, beloved sound of footsteps approaching on the old garden path. Isabel's breath caught, her heart galloping. Change was blooming in every corner of the grove, and at long last, so was the possibility of everything she and Javier could become, together. Javier stood at the entrance of the windmill, suitcase in hand, a hesitant smile battling across his tired face. He looked older, wiser, changed and yet so familiar that it made Isabel's heart bloom with a fierce joy. For a long moment, silence stretched between them, thick with everything they'd been and all they might become. Finally, Javier laughed shakily, dropping his suitcase and opening his arms. "I'm home, if you'll have me." Isabel crossed the space between them. Her hug was fierce and trembling. Tears spilled, happy and unchecked. "You were always home, Javier. You and this place. My heart kept making room for you every day." "I thought of you with every lesson," Javier whispered. "Every new flower I pressed between my books. Every time I saw the sun turn golden over the rooftops. I never stopped missing you." She handed him her latest letter, but he tucked it away and took her hands, serious now. "Isabel, do you want to try this? To really, truly be partners in the grove? In everything?" Warmth soared through her, every memory and letter and promise aligning like the citrus trees after rain. "Yes, I want this," she replied, voice sure and soft. "I want us, not as someone else's secret, but as our own story." They walked through the blossoming grove side by side, greeting neighbors who waved from between the trees. Javier was full of new ideas: solar irrigation, classes for young gardeners, poetry stitched into the very map of the orchard. Isabel laughed, letting herself imagine a future where every orange carried a whisper of their love, a legacy bolder and more open than any she'd dreamed. One evening, as twilight set the fruit and sky alight, the grove's friends gathered for the first annual Festival of Letters. Lamps strung from branch to branch glowed softly, while poems, old and new, fluttered on ribbons tied to the trees. Isabel read the poem Antonio had hidden in the windmill, her voice steady and clear. When she finished, Javier squeezed her hand and stood. "We honor what's come before, but tonight we welcome what's next. This grove will always hold their story, and now it will hold ours." Cheers and laughter filled the air as guests danced among the blossoms. Later, after everyone had gone, Isabel and Javier remained beneath the stars, leaning close, listening to the soft sway of the orchard and to each other's heartbeats. "Do you think they'd be proud of us?" Isabel asked quietly, head resting on his shoulder. Javier pressed a kiss to her hair. I think they would be, because loving bravely is the greatest harvest of all. The moon rose high, casting silver across the grove, where the past and future entwined like roots beneath the oldest, sweetest tree. In the gentle hush, Isabel understood that even as seasons change, some loves, secret or sung aloud, bear fruit forever.